Biohazard warning. Entering contaminated zone. Transmissions jammed. Proximity coverage only. Backup activated. System rebooted.
What's going on, nation? Sly here with a brand new Division video for you. Now, it has been a long time since I've made a proper Division video, and for those of you out there who are halfway new to my channel, the Division is the game that actually started my channel oh so long ago. While my first topic was Destiny, I covered the Division from pretty much, the E3 where it was announced, all the way into the tragic Year 2 special report, which is when I stopped covering it due to Massive dropping the game off to Red Storm, along with the announcements that were made during that special event. Now, ultimately, after a few years of updates, the Division turned itself around completely, but it did so the hard way. And now, Massive is pulling a Bungie and starting off from scratch, a new platform in which to carry the game forward from here on out. Now, I originally, kind of was mad at Massive at first, which is why I stopped covering it. They promised all these fixes and a future for the Division, promising they wouldn't give up on it, etc. And then at the Year 2 reveal, they announced no more DLCs, no more story, and oh, by the way, we're passing the game over to our sister studios, and we'll see you all later. Now, little did I know, they of course were working on the Division 2, which is why they passed it over, but at the time, I thought they were dumping the game on the laps of the smaller studios while they were working on Avatar. And at the time, I thought it was a bad decision. However, turns out it was the best thing that could have happened to the game. Red Storm, along with the other company I can't quite remember, whipped the original Division into shape and completely overhauled it, and they did a fantastic job. While ultimately, it was mostly just adding on to or revamping what they had. Like I mentioned, they did awesome. Now fast forward a few years, and here we are with the Division 2. Unfortunately, I don't have any gameplay that I can show in the background because it's all alpha footage, and that's currently still under NDA. But one thing that really caught my attention and excited me right off the bat was not only the new progression system and the new specialization system, but the new type of armor or gear we can use right off the bat at level 1. They're called brand sets. Similar to gear sets, but they're like a toned down, simplified version of them. Like I mentioned, you can use them from the very first level onwards. Well, of course you have to find them first, but being able to create some kind of, small build within the campaign, that's pretty unique and definitely exciting. My favorite version of brands are going to be weapon brands. They are the best way to introduce unique elements into a game fairly easily. Each brand, of course, has their own unique feel to them, their own style, looks, etc. And just by hearing a name, you know what that type of weapon is going to be all about. Now, the Division 2 so far has only announced brands within the armor or gear, not weapons. And even though it is an odd thing to start off my first video back with talking about something like old news like this, the upcoming beta is right around the corner, and brands are going to be part of it. So let's check out all the different brands of gear as well as the bonuses we know about so far and what you guys should be looking for. Now, hopefully these brands will break off and start introducing weapons later on in the game. Now, if they use brands as like a raid exclusive, then that is definitely going to be pretty exciting. Alright guys, so let's start checking out all of the bonuses and brand sets that have been confirmed so far. Starting off with the first brand set called Araldi Holdings. Now, as far as the bonus stat, it gives you plus 5% MMR damage, 10% headshot damage, and then 10% accuracy. Marksman's rifles, or MMR, in the Division 2 are way different than in the first game. I used to love like the SVD and the M1A, but the way things work now make them much harder to use. I guess it's kind of a good thing, because that means it's going to take more skill to use them effectively. However, one thing I did notice is that headshots do seem to be much more powerful than they used to be. With brands and mods that increase your MMR's damage or headshot damage, it'll make them even more lethal. Next up, our second brand to take a look at, China Light Industries Corporation. This gear gives you 8% shotgun damage, and the next two plus 10% to all resistances, and then 10% skill haste. Moving on to the third one here, Douglas and Harding, something that was actually in the very first game, not as like a brand set, but just the name itself. 5% critical hit chance, 5% accuracy, and then we have 10% critical hit damage. This absolutely has SMG written all over it. Okay, so next up, the coolest brand name out of them all, we have Overlord Armaments. 7.5% armor bonus, 5% weapon damage, and then we have 10% damage to elites. Moving on to the next one, Petrov Defense Group. 8% LMG damage, 10% turret skill power, and then we have 10% skill power. There are quite a few new skills in TD2, and they are all absolutely brand new. Now, some of them are insanely powerful as well. You know, skill builds never really worked out all that great in the very first game, except for the very beginning when you had like the one-shot sticky bomb and then the smart cover. But after all the updates and changes, a few decent builds came out, especially when more gear sets became available, but nothing ever really stuck and settled in. This time, however, I think things are going to be way different. Skill builds will be quite prevalent, and with Petrov Defense Group, or PDG, all over you, it's going to help make it that much more powerful. As far as the LMG, we'll get to that here in a few. Moving on to the next one, guys, we have Providence Defense. 4% weapon damage, 10% skill power, and it also comes with an intrinsic talent called Well-Rounded. Critical hit chance bonus for 6 seconds when completing a cover-to-cover move. I was really hoping that Massive, would end up fully fleshing out cover-to-cover moves. I've always liked things like the damage reduction you got while, moving cover-to-cover, or extra accuracy while in cover, lower threat detection, stuff like that. While some of it was present, they could have done so much better with the cover system, and hopefully Division 2 will just add on to it. Okay, so we are almost done here, agents. The final 3 brands await, and the next one is Richter and Kaiser. Richter und Kaiser! 20% pistol damage, 15% shield skill power, and then we have plus 10 to all resistances. Next, we have Sokolov Concern. 10% SMG damage, 8% critical hit damage, and 10% critical hit chance. And then finally, the last one here is Wyvernware. 7% critical hit damage, 5% headshot damage, and then we have 10% CHC, critical hit chance. Now, while these are nowhere near as awesome as gear sets, brands have always been something I've enjoyed in game. You have things like Tex Mechanica in Destiny, Douglas and Harding in Division, or you can even go way back to the early 2000s and find things like Casa Fabrication, Hani Kadar, like Rosenkopf Materials, or Sarah's Council in the Mass Effect series. They always add a bit of flair to the game, and the good thing about these brands is that you can start finding and equipping them from the get-go. Brands will be available all throughout the campaign, and then once we reach the end game, gear sets should be coming back and taking over from there. Now, before we go, guys, let's talk about how these brands work. The Division has gear slots, as I'm sure you guys all know: mask, gloves, knee pads, backpack, holster, etc. Each brand has its own set of stats that we just talked about, but finding the same brand for 3 different pieces of gear and equipping them all at once will give you an extra bit of oomph by way of a brand set bonus. Now, each brand is going to be different, and I'm not sure what the bonuses are as of right now, but on top of stacking all of these stats together, you will get even more help by completing the set. Now, unlike gear sets where you had a bonus for having just a few pieces, or the big bonus for equipping all 6 pieces, brand set bonuses max out at 3. Or you could go for just a simple well-rounded approach and equip 1 brand in each slot. Since there are 9 brands, you're going to have plenty of options. It seems like to me brand sets are kind of like training wheels for the end game. You get simple brand sets with an uncomplicated bonus system that's available to you the instant you start the game. However, once the end game comes around, gear sets will start creeping back into the picture, and all the mixing, matching, and stat crunching you've done with brand sets can now be put towards a more complex system by way of gear sets. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if some kind of build comes around that uses these brands along with a 3 or 4 piece gear set. Now, what I'm really looking forward to is to see if these brands will expand over into weapons. Having a weapon brand that has an intrinsic stat, perk, or talent across all the different variations of weapons would be awesome. Like, for instance, say the Wyvern brand had only shotguns, crossbows, and sidearms, but their intrinsic perk was something like incendiary ammo. You would know that any Wyvern weapon you pick up would come with fire ammo. I personally love stuff like that, and hopefully Massive has put something like it in the game. And that is it for me, agents. Not a long video, but I've been wanting to make a video on brands for quite a while now. With the beta coming up here in just a few days, I wanted to refresh everyone's mind on what to look for. And unless things have been tuned differently from the alpha, LMGs were absolutely amazing. SMGs were unfortunately trash, and ARs seem to be just about in the exact same spot as they were in TD1. However, light machine guns were fantastic, and I'm excited to hop back in there and test everything out again. Anyways, hope you enjoyed it, guys, and hope to see you all in the upcoming beta. If you're new to the channel, then welcome, my friend. Subscribe for lots more Division, Destiny, and Anthem videos. Spank the thumbs up, but only if you enjoy yourself, and keep those eyes open for more vids coming out soon. But until then, this is your dude Sly, and I'll catch you guys next time.